Hey friends, Kevin here, and today I'm going to show you the different ways that you can make coffee on the road in your minivan or your cargo van, whatever type of van build you have for doing van life, because coffee is important to a lot of people. Coffee, 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 coffee. Some people just don't function without their morning coffee. I can take it or leave it either way, but I like to have it, especially if it's cold. So I'm going to show you some different ways, some cheap ways, some more expensive ways. We're going to talk about what works and what doesn't, because a lot of what these people show simply doesn't work, or even worse, it's actually dangerous. We don't want you doing anything dangerous on the road. We don't want you doing anything dangerous that's going to get you hurt when you're out camping and you're 20 miles from the nearest town. So we're going to discuss all of these ways, what works, what doesn't. Let's get to it. The first one you see a lot of people using is this little system where you boil some water and you have this little plastic cup and this little dinky filter, and you're sitting there and you're now trying to pour your boiling water through this little plastic cup and its little goofy filter, and let it drain out through the bottom into your coffee cup or coffee mug. These things are accidents waiting to happen. I actually have one of these, and let me tell you why it's just a horrible, horrible option. One, there's always the chance that you burn yourself from this boiling or near boiling water, or this whole thing turns over on you while you're trying to do it. But here's the part that doesn't work. It's slow. It's unbelievably slow. This is the thing that's going to test your patience, and I don't have patience. Patience is not one of my strong suits. So you're going to have to sit there and hold and balance this thing and pour the water out of your pot that you just heated up very, very, very slowly. Because you just need a few drops at a time to hit your coffee grounds in there and be able to go through the coffee grounds and come out the little hole in the bottom and drain into your coffee mug. Because if you pour it in there too fast and you have too much water in there, then all of your coffee grounds rise to the top, the water runs out the bottom, and you're going to end up with a very weak cup of coffee. So in order to pull this off, you're trying to balance and do all this a few drops at a time. If you're trying to fill a big coffee mug, I don't have that kind of patience. So between the time it takes and the danger of burning yourself, buying this idiotic $10 piece of plastic is not your best solution. These things should sell for 50 cents. The fact that they're $6 and $8 and $10, I could link one of these down below so you can go over to Amazon and see what they want. But the fact is, I don't want to make the 2 cents you're going to make off buying one of these, because if you buy it, you're going to regret it. So here's my advice. Don't do that. It's not a good system. Number 2. Better than number 1, if you have to boil your own water anyway, is just get you some of these coffee packs that are like tea bags. I know Folger makes them. I'm sure other companies make them. And you're just going to pour your water into your mug, and you're going to bounce your tea bag, coffee bag, like a tea bag, around for 15 or 20 seconds until it's the strength that you want it to be. That is a much better and less dangerous option than option number 1 was. So that would be the one I would go with. And just in case you haven't seen this good coffee that is made in these tea bags, I'm going to link down to it below so you can bounce over and see what I'm talking about. Now I'm coming back in a second with a few more ways to make coffee. But in the meantime, I'd like to know if you're out and about and you're camping and you're on the road with your van build out doing van life, or on long trips or weekend trips. I want to know what you do to make coffee that doesn't involve having a campfire and doing it that way. Something you do in your van when you don't have access to fire pits and things, how are you making coffee on the road? Have you tried different ways? Which ones worked for you? Which ones haven't worked for you? And now let's get to some of these other ways to make coffee when you're out on the road doing van life. Option number 3 would be to just use instant coffee. This stuff that comes in a jar and you put a few spoonfuls in and then you pour your boiling water in on top of it. I don't understand how anyone can drink this stuff, but I'm sure I have some viewers out there that like it. If it works for you, that's fine. My father to this day will still do this. He does this at home. The few times he goes out with me on trips, he will make sure he stops and buys this, even though I can make real coffee. I don't know why anybody would want to drink these coffee-flavored gravels, because that's what it is to me, bad coffee-flavored gravels, but to each their own. But let's move on to the next way to make real coffee. The next way to make real coffee is to do one of these little 12-volt plug-in thingies that you see in truck stops. Without getting too scientific, you can only pull just a little bit of current out of one of these things. And to put it in layman's terms, your coffee pot at home is probably about 1500 watts. What you can pull through that 12-volt plug before you start blowing fuses in your car is about 200 watts. 200 watts, 1500 watts. Will it eventually make you a cup of coffee? It could. If you start at breakfast time, you should have a 6-ounce cup of coffee ready by lunch, because that's what these little plug-in things are going to do. They are going to be that slow. And again, they have to be that slow because you're trying to do this stuff on 1/8 the power. And you can't fight numbers. You can't fight physics. It's a cute ideal, but it's just not going to work. I know people that's bought them. They use them a time or two, and then they give them away or throw them away and go find another solution. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I am going to link that down below, but I'm going to tell you, please don't buy it, because you will not be happy with it. It is not going to work for you. Now, luckily, I'm to the point that I have several thousand subscribers, and almost anything I say, there's somebody that can come on and go, "Ah, you're wrong. This works for me." And that's okay if it works for you. That's fine. But I'm not interested in the exception to the rule. Not to hurt anyone's feelings. If something out there works for 5 people out of 100 and it doesn't work for 95 people out of 100, to me, it's a bad product. It doesn't work. I don't want to deal with it. And I think that's what this kind of product is. There's a couple of people that will be happy with it, at least for a while, but most people aren't going to be happy with it. So let's move on to the next potential coffee solution. If you have house batteries, a solar system, something to charge those batteries, you can use a real coffee pot. Now, in my big van, I have the ability to use a real regular coffee maker, and I carry one of these cheap $12 or $15 coffee pots, and it works fine. But I have the ability to plug in at a campground. I have the ability to run it off of a generator, and I have solar on there to charge those batteries. So I'm able to use those to make a pot of coffee. But if you're out in a cargo van or a minivan, you've just converted, unless you have big house batteries and you have an inverter, a good inverter, that's able to carry this power, because again, the coffee pot is going to pull about 1,000 to 1,500 watts or 10 to 15 amps. It's one of the biggest current draws that you have in your house, like anything that has to heat up fast. So you're going to have a big inverter in order to pull this off. And that inverter is going to cost you a fair amount of money. Now, if you're already that far into doing that kind of build, then you're covered and you're set with just a regular coffee pot, coffee maker. If you have one of these big battery packs, a Jackery 500 maybe, a Jackery 1000 would be able to do it. You will be able to sit there in 10 minutes and have a full pot of coffee using a regular coffee maker. Your next option for someone who doesn't have solar, doesn't want to do any of these other things, and this is something we have. When we started out, the person I'm traveling with, coffee is a necessity for that person. You know who you are. So we have the Coleman propane stove. Coleman makes some add-ons for these regular 2-burner propane stoves, and one of them is this coffee pot. It looks like a regular coffee pot you would have at home in its design. You put the coffee in the top, you put the water in the top, you have a full size. This doesn't hook to electricity. If you look at it, it has a big metal plate on the bottom, and what it's designed for is you light the burner on your propane stove. You have this coffee pot contraption sitting on top with a 2-burner stove. While you're making coffee with it, you can be doing breakfast on your other burner. Does it work? Yes, it works. It works well. With one caveat, it's kind of slow. I haven't timed this out yet. I'm going to in the next video when I'm in that van using it on a trip. But I would guesstimate it's going to be 20 minutes or so to make a pot of coffee. So it's not fast, but it does work. It is a drip coffee maker. The propane on the burner heats the plate, which heats the water and turns it into steam and has it drip through there. And it's going to be exactly like, as far as the coffee quality it outputs, it's going to be exactly the same as what you would have with a plug-in coffee maker that you would use at home. Now, here's a little warning for these Coleman coffee pots, which is this. I have seen these things sell off and on for some absolutely ridiculous prices. I have seen these things sell or be advertised places for $150 at times. Supply and demand. So I'm going to link down to this so you can go to Amazon and see what these things are selling for right now. This is a $50 or less product. People that are selling these for $100 and $150 are ripping you off. It's your money. If you see it for selling for $150 and you choose to buy one, more power to you. But I'm telling you, you're getting jacked when you see this Coleman coffee maker selling for that price. Again, it is a $50 maximum cost. You should be able to get it a little bit cheaper than that, but for some reason, they don't make a lot of these. They're hard to find, and that supply and demand and the prices accordingly get out of whack on these things sometimes. So if that's the option, the route you decide to go, a little patience will get you a good deal on these things. Now, you may be thinking, especially if you're new to this, well, any place I've ever been camping, I've been in state parks, I've had grills and I've had fire pits and campground. Well, if you're out on the road and you're doing the things and doing a lot of traveling and you're staying at places that were talked about in these other videos, it's going to be a lot cheaper to stay there, sometimes free camping, but you're not going to have these fire pits and all of these things. So you're going to have a way to make coffee in your van or right outside of your van. And that's why we're covering these different ways to do it. So regardless of where you are, regardless of what camping situation you are in, you're able to have coffee. If coffee is important to you in the morning. Coffee, 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 coffee. So these are some of the best ways I've found, I've seen other people do. I've played the different devices I've played with over the years, what works and what doesn't. Keeping it simple, if you want the simplest, cheapest way, is going back to this one. Quite honestly, works like a charm. Now, doing coffee and cooking on the road, try different products. If you've not seen this video, you may want to watch this next. A review of some way to have some fresh meat on the road without having a fridge, without having a cooler even. That's right. Ground beef in a can. And we'll talk soon.